Hello guys, happy Friday. Welcome to another episode of Theatre&Tonic with myself, Emmy, and I will be chatting to Rebecca Gwyther. Now, apologies if I get that wrong. She is the creative producer of Amelie, which is very apt for this week as we've gone back to the theatres this week, which is hella exciting. And so, of course, I'm going to be playing Amelie today, who opened on their first preview last night. So it's all very exciting. But I hope you've had a really good week and that you are very excited that the theatres are back. I went to my first experience last night at the Curve, as you would have seen on my grid. And it's really exciting. And after this live, I am booking a show called 𝗘𝗺𝗶𝗹 the Musical. I'm going to watch that next Friday, which will be really nice. Nice way to end the week. Right, let's get Rebecca in. Mark, I'm sure you've never heard of this. Alright.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you, Rebecca? Are you okay?
Yeah, good, thank you.
I hope I've caught you at a good time because obviously it's quite a busy week for yourself.
It is, yeah. With the opening last night, and I'm not actually at the show tonight, but I'm looking forward to kind of seeing how it changes later this week.
Lovely, how exciting. Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's a really exciting week obviously for yourself with Amelie opening. So to start us off with this Q&A, could you just give us a roundup of how it all began for yourself?
Of theatre in general or Amelie specifically?
Theatre in general.
So when I left like sixth form, I went and worked at the Edinburgh Fringe for 6 weeks. One of those kind of wild working at a venue and kind of doing a bit of everything. But I ended up in the press and marketing department there, and I, along the way, met a group of producers who kind of showed me like what producing really was. And then following that Fringe, I got onto a director's training program, and so did that for 6 months, and part of that was to produce a week-long theatre festival at the end of it. And I went, oh, I'm not terrible at directing, but there are definitely people that can do this better than me. But my brain just kind of understood the producing side of it, and I think I've always been a weirdly organized person. And so then it sort of all just went from there. I carried on producing shows that I took interest in, and here we are producing a show in the West End.
Not a bad way to get there, I suppose. So obviously with the training you did do to get there, what do you think were the fundamental things for you for your career now?
I think just understanding how the theatre industry works, and you can do that in all sorts of ways. You can do that in the formal training, or you can do that in, just working it out a little bit. But I'd say that's probably the fundamental thing that's carried through. And obviously that expands, and as you work on different shows and different kinds of shows, it varies a little bit. But yeah.
That's really interesting to hear, I suppose. And I guess as well, because there's so many different roles in theatre, so what was it that specifically drew you to producing above anything else? Because obviously you've had a bit of experience in like the press and marketing side, so what was it about the producing that you kind of went, oh, okay, I like this?
I think I like the business side of it, and I like making things happen, which obviously making things happen is a big system. There are so many people involved in that. But yeah, bringing everything together and sort of seeing the logical side of it make something creative happen. And there are creative elements in that, of course, but yeah, I think that's probably it.
And do you find it quite difficult with producing to get the work? Because obviously there's so many producers out there. Is it quite difficult to get the work kind of seen?
In some ways, yes, and in some ways, no. I think like you never know what's going to appeal to someone, whether that's a programmer or an audience member. There are obviously, you can guess, and you have an idea of what would appeal to people. But I think sometimes you get something that's very unexpected that people just absolutely love. So I think there are a lot more artists than there are producers. I think we still need more producers to get stuff going. So it's hard in some ways, but not in others. There definitely isn't a lack of work to produce.
And I guess, like you say, it's just about having that kind of support behind it, isn't it, to ensure that happens?
Yeah, absolutely.
So obviously we've had a very strange, I'm going to say strange, few months. How did the pandemic impact your career personally?
Well, so obviously it meant that a lot of projects that I was working on were halted and I couldn't do an awful lot that I had planned, and that's really difficult. And I think especially seeing a whole industry being, well, kind of being on fire and no one being able to do anything and no one being able to do what they're trained to do had a massive impact. But I managed to carry on producing things both online and when I could, workshops in person and things like that. And in a way, it gave me time to kind of sit back and work out exactly what I really wanted to produce and what I'm really invested in. So out of that, I've had 3 or 4 really incredible shows that I'm working on, that I'm developing, that hopefully will go up in the near future. So I guess it's impacted my career in terms of there's no solid trajectory, but it's helped it in, I guess, defining it and what I want to do.
Absolutely. And I guess as well, like you say, you went into kind of looking at the stream digital side of it. Is that something you think you would definitely like to play more with looking forward?
So I didn't actually do that much work. I did a kind of online event near the beginning and I held a few other bits and pieces. But I'm not sure stream theatre is for me. I think it's an incredible thing, and I think that people have made incredible work, but I think the people that have really succeeded are those that have designed work to be streamed. And I think that going forward, things like NT Live or, you know, that on a smaller scale should absolutely be part of productions and production budgets. But I think specifically producing a show for online is a slightly different thing. And I think there are people that do that incredibly well. And I'm not sure that side of it is what I'm invested in. But definitely, as I say, shows being filmed and then being able to be seen by people all over the world is incredible, and we should use going forward.
And I guess as well with like streamed work, there's a whole new skill set there, isn't there, in comparison to stuff that you do in live theatre? Yeah,
exactly. I think like we, at the very beginning of lockdown, everyone was very excited to kind of get work out online. But we do have to remember it is a different medium and audiences interact with it in a different way. And I think there are some, I watched 𝗘𝗺𝗶𝗹 by 𝗘𝗺𝗶𝗹, and I think that did a really incredible thing in it being a theatre show and it being live, but actually it merged those two mediums really well.
Cool. And how did you continue to keep yourself inspired then during that lockdown time?
I was surrounded by some really incredible people on these, at the time, 3 projects that I was doing, who are amazing people and amazing collaborators and create really exciting work in lots of different ways. And I think we all helped keep each other sane. There were also a few kind of producing Zooms and things like that I ended up on, which kind of helped everyone, you know, share worries, but also have a bit of a relief and chat to just producers kind of experiencing similar things, and not getting too tied up in what absolutely everyone is saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I guess that was quite difficult because the news changed so frequently, didn't it? That there was no clear line where you were going, because it was always like, okay, well, this might happen and then this might happen. So what is your favourite part of bringing a show together as a producer?
I think there are 2 points. I find the beginning stage where you sort of start to know what's going to happen with it and you're building a team. I think that's incredibly exciting because it's as it's, you know, forming. And then seeing it on stage, first preview usually, because it's all come to life. And it doesn't quite come to life in a tech or a dress rehearsal. It is that first show with an audience in front of it as it's designed to be. And you just go, oh, this is why I did all of this.
Absolutely. So obviously, you're creative producer on Amelie. So what is your story with Amelie and how did you get involved with it?
So I'm an associate producer, and I came on board relatively late, actually. I saw it back at the Other Palace in 2019.
Seems ages ago, doesn't it?
And I just love the show. I think it's such a charming show, and I think especially at the moment it's the kind of thing that we want to get on board and get people to go and see. And a friend of mine is also working on the show and sort of brought me in when there was an associate producer spot going, which is something I haven't done before. I'm really invested in kind of creating my own work and new work. And so it was a bit of I wouldn't say a leap, but outside of my normal producing kind of style. And it was quite a kind of fast turnaround in terms of raising investment and getting it all going. But the team have been incredible, and I'm so happy to be on board.
So what is the difference between a producer role and an associate producer role, for those who can't kind of understand what that means?
So generally on sort of big West End shows, you have executive producers, and they're quite often co-producers, and then you have a rung below that, which is associate producers. So the executive producers or the co-producers are usually the people to make the final decisions on everything, and also, you know, raise some investment and get it all going. And associate producers also raise a bit of investment and are part of the show and everything that's going on in all of the meetings and things like that. But we don't have final say in what happens, I guess. We have influence, sway, but not final decision.
Yeah, you kind of like carrying on someone else's work, aren't you? But kind of still being quite in charge of it and steering it towards that end goal, I suppose. So obviously it's opened on the first week of theatres reopening. How has that felt?
Incredible. I mean, I made the decision not to see a single show before I saw Amelie last night, because I was that excited, and it kind of felt quite appropriate that after however many months of not going to the theatre, that a show that I was doing was the first one. But I think it's amazing to be back in theatres, and gosh, seeing a musical on stage. It's just, I think it's always been for me a slightly different thing seeing a musical, and I think we must be the first musical that's back up and running, and that is incredibly exciting. I think it's the ideal show for people to go and watch at the moment, because it's about love and kindness, but also getting out of your comfort zone a little bit and seeing the world. So yeah, and obviously because it's quite a new musical, well, it is a new musical, isn't it? So how do you think it was received last night? What was the atmosphere like last night? The atmosphere last night was incredible. I mean, it was sold out and we got a standing ovation. And I think just everyone was so excited to be back in that theatre. You could tell after the opening number that there was such a buzz around, and that everyone is just, you know, so relieved to be back watching something that they love and being somewhere that they love. So yeah, it was incredible. And hopefully that kind of feeling will be retained throughout the run.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it in 2 weeks. I'm dying to watch it again. It's not even okay. So how difficult was it bringing the show together during this time? Because obviously it's probably a lot different to bringing a show together in normal times. So what has it been like bringing that together?
Yeah, so I came on board a little bit later. So I guess I didn't have that initial madness of how it's all going to work. But I think it's definitely been different, and obviously like social distancing and keeping cast and crew safe and ensuring that everything can still carry on has been incredibly difficult, and we're so lucky to have such an incredible team in order to like make it all happen and keep everyone safe. I think also like the government's constantly changing restrictions makes everything incredibly difficult and makes it also uncertain, and you know, we're still carrying on without government insurance or things like that. And it's just, I think it's the ongoing uncertainty. Like theatre is a risk anyway. Like produce theatre knowing that it's risky, but with everything that's going on, kind of a kind of lack of help, it's been definitely more difficult.
I think they've been like that across the board though. I mean, I work in a school and it's never been clear from day one. So like for ourselves in work, like we understand it's been difficult from day one with us. So I can imagine for theatres it's just as difficult, because like you say, there's been a lot of investment as well in putting those guidelines in force, haven't you? You know, you've had to make a big loss in terms of seating and things. So for those who are unaware, I mean, most of these people here are probably Amelie fans. Can you tell us a little bit about the story?
Yeah, so Amelie is a young French girl who moves to Paris and is kind of used to living a slightly isolated life, and gradually throughout the show kind of realizes this world around her and gets involved in it all, and has a bit of a love story in there too, but it's all about love and kindness and kind of acceptance. And I very badly explained that.
If I was to describe Amelie, I always say it just feels like the biggest hug. It's just something about it, isn't it? From like start to finish, there's something so lovely about the music, about the way it's staged. So obviously, because the musicians are on the stage, aren't they? You know, and it's that relationship that they are very much involved in the story. So because of that, has that kind of been a challenge with this show, with all the new restrictions, having the musicians on stage, or have you kind of tried to keep that the same?
So we've kept that the same. It's still an incredible 𝗘𝗺 show, but you know, it's back to doing all that COVID testing, and during the rehearsal period, people were being tested 2-3 days a week, and things like that. Sorry, I've just seen in the comments that someone says it's not a hug, it's an emotional roller coaster, and I really enjoyed that comment. Sorry, slightly off topic.
That's fine.
So the 𝗘𝗺s are still on the stage, and it's a better version of the show that it was before, because of the criteria in it, and it being after this difficult period of time, but it is still the same show and it still has all the same charm.
My friend Sophie has asked, does Audrey still eat raspberries? Very important question.
Come and see the show to find out.
I think we're both going on the same day, so we'll have to find out that way. So what is your favourite part of the show?
I'm a big fan. I feel like this is the stereotypical thing to be really enjoy, but I'm a big fan of the nun moment. I just think that that's an incredible scene. But just generally, I'm such a big fan of 𝗘𝗺 shows. I think it has charm, and it just kind of, the movement that it brings to a story. That's not a specific moment, but
Bottle drops is my favourite part, or Sister's Pickle.
Great choices.
Yeah, absolutely. So have you tried to change anything in the show for the West End transfer?
There are some changes, but I don't think there's anything major. It will still be the same show that you love, but as I say, slightly improved.
And do you have any favourite songs?
I'm a big fan of When the Booth Goes Bright.
Yeah.
I think like I love seeing that on stage, and I've been listening to the soundtrack so much recently, and then seeing it on stage last night, I was like, oh yeah, still gives me shivers. I'm trying to think. Booth Goes Bright is probably my favorite. Also Stay and Times Are Hard for Dreamers. I'm a big ballad fan, actually, in general. Yeah,
I love a ballad. Who doesn't? What do you think has made Amelie so popular with audiences? Because obviously it is a new musical, and I think some people are always a bit cautious about new musicals, and you know, whether they are they fit into the West End or fit into the musical theatre. So what do you think it is about Amelie that people have taken so much to?
So I think that obviously a lot of people know the film, and I think you get a lot of people who are film fans and not theatre or music fans. So the fact that kind of brings in a certain group of audiences that will love it. But then also I think the actor muso element, again, I think we've had such success with shows like, I'm thinking Once is the one that springs to mind. I think what made Amelie so popular was the lampshade. Yeah, I think there's a lot in it for everyone, and it just generally, you know, even where it's advertised, I think the marketing team have done an incredible job, that it does just feel like, you know, you're going to see a big musical, but it is something slightly different and slightly, yeah.
I always think with things that are like actor musicians on the same stage, it makes it feel almost more intimate. You know, and I don't, there's something, isn't it? There's a little bit there. There's like a relationship that's just a bit different to having like an orchestra sat in a pit and then.
Absolutely. I think you feel like everyone is part of it. There's no orchestra pit where everyone's separated. It is everyone's in this together. And I think that comes from, obviously, even the people that aren't directly involved in that scene, they are involved in the story the whole time. So yeah, I agree with that, definitely.
Someone has asked, is the fig nightmare still so intense? Asking for a friend.
It is still a nightmare.
Let me have a look. So what do you hope for Amelie's future within the West End? Because obviously it's quite a limited run. Is there kind of a future you're kind of hoping for it?
Yeah, so we've got the run until September, and I guess that's just getting as many people to see it as possible, because it is such a great show. And I think there's an idea to do more with it after that, but that's all a bit up in the air, and I'm not too certain of the plans for that.
It'd be really nice for it to go on tour again, because I saw it when it was on tour, and I think it just has a bit of a place within touring, doesn't it? I think it's one of those musicals that would do so well again on tour, but then I think having a main hub in the West End would be lovely.
Yeah, let's hope it becomes that big.
Absolutely. And do you think that new musicals should have a place within the West End? Because obviously we do have a lot of long standing musicals, don't we? We have the traditional musicals, and do you think the West End will start to move after this time?
Yeah, I hope that it does. I think that the pandemic has given the opportunity for all sorts of people to bring shows to the West End, but there is still the element of, you've got to be able to sell the tickets. So I've been developing a new musical recently, and definitely the next step of that is, how does that fit into the current theatrical landscape? I have no doubt that it's an incredible show and that it will appeal to people, but it's marketing that in the right way to get people in. And I do hope that there are more new musicals that come into the West End, because I think new work is an essential part of our theatrical landscape, and we're so good for it in the UK. And there's no reason that those shouldn't be on main stages.
And do you find that quite a pressure then when you're writing these new musicals, that's something you have to think about whilst you're writing it? Is it something that kind of sits in your conscious thinking, that whatever you write, you've got to think, well, if I want this to be successful, I have to think about that kind of side to it?
Yeah, so I think with this, I'm not writing this new musical. It's got a writer and a composer and a director on board. But I think, like, being part of the process as a producer, you are always thinking about the commercial side of it and how it's going to sell and what it's going to do, as well as that creative element and making it the best show possible. And especially for this show, this musical, it's at such an early stage. It's kind of second draft type area. So there's definitely an element of that. There are things that I'm thinking about how it's going to happen, that I have to keep quiet because it can't impact the creative side of it just yet.
So if they said to you then, right, you can choose whatever show you want on the West End right now, you can kind of go in there as associate producer, which one would you pick?
So a like long running show as associate. Yeah. Ooh. That's really tough. Probably something like Hamilton. I feel like that's really cliche to say, but Come From Away.
Here we go.
Come From Away. feel like the really like commercial musical theatre side of me is coming out now.
My friend Mark has asked, is being a producer similar to what happens in The Producers?
So I've never seen The Producers.
I haven't either.
I think that from what I've heard, it's the bad side of Producers.
Okay, there you go then.
Sorry.
I haven't watched it either, so it's okay. Don't worry about it. So why should people book to see Amelie?
I think it's the perfect show to see right now. I think it's something that will get you back into the theatre, that you'll enjoy the night out, as well as it being a great story and a great show all round. Yeah.
And I guess for those audience members that are still a bit hesitant about going back, what would you say to them if you were kind of trying to reassure them on things that you've put into place at your theatre?
So we've got so many all of the COVID precautions in place. So things from track and tracing to temperature checks on the door to social distancing within the theatre and everyone wearing masks. But also on top of that, things like you're not going to go stand by a crowded bar. You will have drinks brought to your seat and you will order through an app and things like that. And I think that, you know, once you're seated, you are in that space and there is no one really close to you. The rows in front of you, the row in front of you and the row behind you has been removed. So I have to say the leg space is exceptional. But it does feel like a really safe environment. And I think if you're particularly cautious, then there is space for you to be. There are traffic light systems on the doors and things like that. Yeah.
Have you found there being any challenges with doing it? Because I know I went to the Curve last night and it was taking ages to go in. And I was like, I feel sorry for them. I feel sorry for front of house because actually, I guess it's quite demanding for them now. But have you found that that's been quite tricky, kind of trying to manage all of that before they go into the theatre?
Yeah, it's definitely a bit of a system that you have to get used to. And I think also the audience members have to get used to. There's no running into a show last minute. It does have to be planned out and you do have to go in your entry times and things like that. The front of house staff are doing an exceptional job at managing it all and, you know, working with all of the precautions that are in place. So tops to them.
Absolutely. So a final question then from me is, can you sum up Amelie in 3 words?
I'm so bad at these.
I don't like the important ones either. I'm always like,
sum up yourself in 3 words. And I'm like, oh, Amelie in 3 words. Charm, love, and kindness.
Oh, that's really nice. That's so nice. What I'll do is I'll just open up the Q&A and just see if anyone wants to ask any questions before. However, Mark's on here who actually confessed yesterday that he has booked 4 trips to Amelie.
Wow,
which is very committed.
When I was at the show yesterday, I saw someone wearing a denim jacket that had the Amelie poster on the back of it in fabric, which I thought was incredible. So, Mark, you better up your game if you're coming 4 times.
Someone has said they're going to see the show next Friday and they cannot wait.
Great.
I have 6 booked. Oof. But I feel like I need to catch everyone up because I've only booked 1, so I'm like, maybe I need to book another one.
I've only seen it once, so
feel like we need to up our game a little bit. Oh my god!
Oh, it's your friend's jacket. Ah, I almost went up to ask for a picture, but I decided it was a bit much, especially with COVID happening. I'm not sure how people feel about that.
Someone has said, Mark has said, bugger, needs to find my paintbrush. In June, it will be her 14th visit to the show.
I hope it lives up.
I think that's the thing though with Amelie, is that although it is very new, it has such a big following, like a crazy following, considering it is so new. Yeah.
Well, I think again, like it's got that, you know, people that love the film, but also people that love theatre and the film, and then people that are just a fan of musicals. It kind of covers it all.
There is a picture of it on London Theatre's Instagram.
Ah, let's go take a look.
Right. I think that will be it for this evening. Have you got any kind of advice for people who want to get into producing?
I'd say just start doing it and contact whoever you want. Like producers are really willing to give their time to people that want to work as producers or work in the industry, because it's such a, I think lots of people don't really know what producers actually do, and there are all sorts of different levels of it too. So start doing it and get in touch with anyone that you might like to work with, because you never know where it's going to lead.
Yeah, I think shadowing like people is quite important. I always think that's quite a nice thing to do, like kind of follow that person, do some work with them.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm always up for talking to anyone. I did some one-to-one sessions for new producers and emerging artists in lockdown 2-3 February this year. And that was really incredible because I got to meet so many like new producers and things like that. So I'm always up for having a chat.
I've absolutely been called out here. Emmy's not seen it without Danny Mac yet. Okay, leave me alone.
Does that mean that you're going to see Pretty Woman too?
No, I don't know if I want to see it. Oh, that's really bad. I'd only see it for him anyway. But thank you so much for joining me this evening, Rebecca. I'm sorry, it's been quite short, but actually quite sweet.
Not at all. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you very much, and good luck with Amelie. I cannot wait to see it in under 2 weeks. And yeah, it'd been lovely to chat to you after a few weeks, or the couple of months back.
Yeah, definitely.
Just to find out how like it's gone on after a while, because obviously when it's freshly new, it's kind of once it's settled a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. That would be great.
One final comment from Mark, which I think sums it up. Thanks for bringing the show back in such challenging times and for helping me heal with this show.
Oh, thanks, Mark. Thank you for coming. Wouldn't exist without you guys.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Good luck with Amelie, and I shall speak to you really soon.
Yeah, you too. Thanks so much.
Thank you. You're welcome. Bye. That was a lovely, short and sweet Q&A this evening with Rebecca. I love Amelie, and it was really nice to chat to her about her role as a producer on it, and talk about what it's like to come back to the West End during this weird time. Yes, don't worry, Sophie, these lives get saved anyway and posted up. I should be joined by some of the Amelie cast at some point over the next 2 weeks. So save yourselves, people, because it's coming. But I will be back next week. I am just about to confirm who I have as my guest next week. It might be on a different day next week. I'm thinking maybe Thursday instead of Friday, as I will be going to the theatre next Friday now to watch 𝗘𝗺 the Musical, which will be great. But yes, I will be back soon. Have a great Friday evening, and keep your eyes peeled for a Q&A with the Amelie cast if you are an Amelie fan. Take care, happy Friday, goodbye.